Welcome back. This week we are continuing our discussion of the Lord's Prayer by focusing on a key phrase from among the opening petitions. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Like anything that we repeat often, the true meaning of these words may easily be lost on us. This expression cannot simply be a reference to a concept. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven should be a statement of our resolve to subordinate our will to God. Additionally, there must be outward evidence of this resolve in how we live and in our willingness to struggle to accomplish it. If this is not the case, the petitions expressed in the Lord's Prayer become superficial. Then the entire prayer becomes a vain repetition, something that Jesus strongly warned against. Jesus provided a relevant picture in Matthew 7:13 and 14. Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it. Because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it. Here he makes it clear that a choice must be made, the broad way or the narrow way. This picture was a reference to the architecture of walled cities in Jesus' time. The main entry to a city had to accommodate every type of transportation used, along with whatever goods were being transported. However, at night, the main gates were closed in order to keep the city safe and secure. Nighttime entry was only possible through much smaller gates called the Eye of the Needle. They were so small that only one person could pass through at a time, and one had to bow down in order to enter. It is not difficult to visualize the meaning of the broad way. On such a pathway, restrictions are not necessary. It has room for everyone's opinions, perspectives, and ideas. This could readily lead to the question, is God narrow and small? How is it that only those who subordinate their will to His can find the way to salvation? All too readily, we focus on what we might perceive to be restrictive aspects of this teaching about the broad and narrow ways. But please don't overlook the promise found herein. Narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life. Jesus makes an invitation to life, eternal life with Him and the Father. This is simply a statement of fact. The way that leads to eternal life is the narrow way. Walking on the narrow way requires that we subordinate our will to God's will. Subordination is not mindless following, but rather choosing to be obedient. The definition of subordinate is inferior in nature, power, or importance. So subordinating our will to God's will means that we recognize that His perspective and His wisdom are superior to ours. This subordination also implies that we adjust our living to make Jesus' life and teaching our model. Let's consider some examples of when we might need to struggle to submit to God's will, and these will be elaborated on in the study guide. First, disagreement. It is safe to say that generally, where two or more people are in contact with one another, disagreements are likely to arise. Can we imagine that there is room on the narrow way for disagreements? What solution did Christ provide? Second, selfishness. We live in a time where the prevailing sentiment seems to be, I must take care of myself first, even if that means that I step on someone else to do it and ignore the effect of my actions on others. How does Jesus address this in the Great Commandment? Discrimination is the third point. In Acts 10, we can read about Peter and Cornelius. Jesus' lesson to Peter on this occasion was a teaching about something that did not fit on the narrow way. What is our reaction when we realize that something in our lives does not fit on the narrow way? The fourth point, gossip. The eighth commandment provides guidance of something that does not have a place on the narrow way. That is, bearing false witness. Can it really be that this Old Testament teaching has New Testament implications? And finally, the fifth point, convenience. The narrow way is by definition a way that is not always comfortable. Does the Lord take joy in our not being comfortable in life? When we reflect on how we can make the petition, "Your will be done," a reality in our lives, with God's help, we will be able to recognize opportunities to leave our will on the side and make His will our own.